That's fine. That's all right. All right. All right. Hello, everyone. We got a special guest today here on Conversations with Rob. Please listen to us on the radio and subscribe to our videos. I have Rob at Platshorn. Is that how you say your name, sir?
No. Platshorn. Platshorn. Platshorn.
Platshorn. And he's got a story to tell, and I did hear from him he did a group down there and talked to a lot of the senior citizens in Delray Beach about marijuana legalization, etc. So, Robert, thanks so much for coming on the program. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Right. So, if you could just start and tell the audience about you and where you're from originally, how you grew up, just a little synopsis.
I'm from South Philadelphia. I grew up on a business street. Worked all my life from about age 5 to earn my allowance. And I was pitchman for 17 years on the boardwalk of Atlantic City and all the big state fairs and home shows. I was making infomercials before they were even called infomercials, right. Before Ron Popeil. In fact, I made the first Ginsu knife commercial. Remember, you cut chicken and ham, you carve turkey and lamb, you cut a cow in half with this knife, lady. And that's no bull. Lady come up this morning, said, young fella. She was talking to me. She said, young fella, will that knife cut thin? I said, bless your stingy heart, madam. You have a knife like this in your house? One tomato lasts you all winter long, you stingy devil.
Wow, you got it down to a science still.
Yeah, and I spent a few years in Europe. I started the largest chain of schools, the Dynamic Reading Institutes. I had my own teachers in Oxford, Cambridge, Edinburgh, London University. I had schools in Holland and Germany. And then I came back to the United States and became Breyer's biggest distributor. I invented a pushcart that would dispense dipping ice cream and had them out with fresh sugar cones and 8 flavors of Breyer's ice cream. And we killed them with that. Eventually, I moved back to Miami to restart my ice cream business and go back and finish law school. But in the end, I got into the smuggling trade. Smuggled a little marijuana. In fact, a lot of marijuana. Right. Really good marijuana.
Right.
From Santa Marta in Colombia. I brought in most of the Colombian gold that has since become the mother strain of almost all of the good medical hybrids that are grown in the United States today. And so it brings us to black tuna.
Right.
That, by the way, if you wonder where the name came from, the government laid it on us. The government's always got to put a name or a label on something. And they found this old picture of me with actually that was a yellowfin tuna.
Right.
But they thought it was a blackfin tuna. And they decided that we were the black tuna gang. And this medallion that we wear, which is from my fishing team. There were like 9 of us who got this medallion because we used to fish together in all the tournaments and bring in a little marijuana when we came home from the tournaments. Actually, we'd fill the boat or 2 boats or an airplane. And we brought in a fair bit. I mean, the government said we brought in 3 million pounds. It was closer to 100,000 pounds. But that's not chopped liver either.
Well, the government always makes stuff up, so.
Yeah, but it was so good it made up for the fact that it wasn't 3 million pounds. They say today marijuana isn't your dad's marijuana, your granddad's marijuana. It's much stronger today. What an utter bunch of pure bullshit. the marijuana we brought in from Colombia averaged 18%, and sometimes some of it tested out at 20, 21%. It's top shelf today, anywhere you go. You know, and to say it's so much stronger and more dangerous, it is just nonsense. I mean, marijuana is self-titrating. If you got a good two-toke joint, two tokes is enough.
Right.
And you just automatically stop because you got where you wanted to go. So that whole thing about marijuana being much more dangerous, and it just has no basis in truth at all. I can remember Thai stick and Hawaiians that were all tested out around the same as good Colombian.
Right.
So good pot's nothing new. Legal pot is new, and that's great. And you're hearing that from a guy who spent 30 years in prison for importing marijuana. First offense, no violence, but we've kind of managed to turn lemons into lemonade because I started the Silver Tour, and that gave us the senior vote, and that made all the difference in the world. You might remember in California in 2010, they had Prop 19 on the ballot. That was for full legalization. And I went out there, I was on the radio, I was on TV, and I told people, don't pass this. The government's going to start closing down your wonderful California medical. Everybody said, nah, you're from Florida. You don't know what you're talking about back there. And of course, it lost. It lost by about 6%, Prop 19. And within a month, the federal government started slamming growers in Northern California. And in Southern California, they started going after the dispensaries. You might remember, what was her name? Oh, Melissa Hagg. She was the prosecutor out in, I think it was Southern California. Yeah. And every time I heard the name, I thought about Popeye and the sea hag. And that was the mental picture. But she was bound and determined to make a name for herself closing dispensaries, which is an incredibly stupid thing to do in a state like California. I think she's gone from view nowadays. In any case, I looked at the exit polls and saw it was seniors who defeated Prop 19. And I said, uh-oh, that doesn't make sense. I'm a senior, I'm a pitchman, and if I can't go out and make a difference, nobody can. I mean, my generation invented marijuana for white people. That may sound strange, but it happens to be true. Before the 70s, the only marijuana generally available in this country was bad border Mexican weed. And you were lucky if that came out at 8% or 10% THC. You used to smoke it, and then you'd have to ask somebody if it looked like you were high, because it sure didn't feel like it. And with a headache and a sore throat. So people tried it, gave it up. But in the mid 70s, when we started bringing in the good Colombian and the Thai weed and the Hawaiian, it just exploded. Instead of something that was just for jazz musicians or, street people, it became a serious relaxation for the general public and started acceptance.
So Robert, I just want to jump into, because you did bring up a lot of good points, and a lot of my questions I want to bring in about that. But first, where I saw you and heard about you was at that Silver Tour when you were down in Delray talking to the seniors. We see a lot of seniors, and you know this as being a pitchman.
These Silver Tours.
Right, yeah, they listen to the mainstream media. They believe everything they hear on TV. Because they grew up with TV. That's where it started. People my generation, they look toward the internet, to Twitter, Facebook, and stuff. And we have a different opinion on marijuana. So first of all, I mean, I know you said you saw the exit polls, but with the California election, is that how you got started with the Silver Tour? You just saw that seniors were just kind of are not, seeing the benefits of marijuana, and that it's not like a drug that can really hurt you. It's a drug that can help you, that, you can use for medical reasons. And also it's a plant. It's a plant. It's not like you're doing all these crazy drugs they have on the market for anxiety and all this stuff. It's insane, the side effects. But if you could just tell us about how you got that Silver Tour started, and if it was just about seniors and media in general.
No, fairly simple.
Yeah.
Seniors are the vote that makes a difference in every state, especially where I live in Florida. But in California, Oklahoma, Arizona, New York, seniors always vote. They value their vote.
Right.
And so the senior vote is really what was missing all those years. The other thing that was missing was education. I mean, I'm a director of Normal, and that's the oldest organization there is promoting legalization. But Normal never sent people out to educate. Normal never ran big education events. Nobody did. There was no organization in America actually trying to educate the public where you find the public, and that's mainstream media.
Why do you feel like they didn't send anybody out, or nobody's been out talking to the public besides someone like you?
Beats the crap out of me. It doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, if you want to legalize, the first thing you got to do is educate.
Right.
And with Normal, which I love, you had to go join a Normal chapter to get educated.
Right.
When you've seen one of my live shows,
Yeah.
but I had that same show on television 200 times in Florida before the last election. It was in a dozen other states to help them pass medical or pass recreational. That show's very potent. Where did you see it? At Kings Point?
It was Vizcaya.
Vizcaya. We've been there 4 times.
Right.
4 times. We did the Daily Show from there.
Right.
We also did a special for Channel 7 Australia. That was a 1-hour special that had the biggest audience they ever had in Australia.
Wow.
And that was mostly our Silver Tour.
Yeah.
Somebody had to reach out, go out, and educate the public, especially seniors. You didn't have to educate the youth group.
Right.
They were already on our side.
Right.
No sense going out and preaching.
Right.
They're the ones who should be out preaching. But nobody was talking to seniors, to veterans, to legislators, to grown-ups. And it really wasn't as hard as it looked, because my generation was smoking pot a long time ago. And mostly it was a matter of bringing them out of the closet, reminding them that it was good, not bad. Today, more than half our seniors are on Ambien or Lunesta in order to go to sleep. Seniors can't sleep. And all you got to do is remind them, look, if you've ever seen that commercial for the Lunesta, it tells you could, it's got little butterflies, and they tell you could walk in your sleep and talk in your sleep, drive a car in your sleep. You remember, I think it was Ethel Kennedy ran into a tree. She was on Ambien, and she had kids in the car.
Yeah.
There are 150 people a month are killed by Ambien or Lunesta. Wow. They tell you, if you're depressed, don't take it. Well, what senior's not depressed? Who's not depressed if they can't sleep? I mean, it's absurd. But it doesn't put you to sleep. It puts you in a fugue state. And it's very uncomfortable. You're not dreaming. You're not really relaxed. And so some people will take a second one. And they tell you, if you do that, your tongue will swell up and it's over.
Wow. I didn't
So
know that.
it's, if you remind people how nice it was when they'd smoke a joint with friends, eat a pizza, try to figure out what they were talking about before they ordered the pizza, because they forgot already. And they just had a nice evening and a really good night's sleep. And people remember that. And that's a nice doorway in. And then you can talk about the relief from arthritis, from rheumatism. You can talk about all of the research that's been done treating cancer with cannabis. And the one thing that scares the living crap out of every senior is dementia, Alzheimer's.
Right.
Everybody can relate to it. They've got a friend, a relative, a spouse, a father, a mother, in a nursing home who went there to die because there is no treatment, except now there is. And when I show them that video of the nursing home in Illinois with those 3 patients who are right at the end of life, they don't talk anymore, they don't walk anymore, they throw things and then they scream and they don't remember their relatives. And then they take a little cannabis, all changes, and they begin to remember. They're able to get up and walk, talk. They can recognize people. That's a miracle to old guys like me. It really is. And at Vizcaya, I'd say the first time we did that show, we had about 20% of the people who went and made an appointment to get their medical card. Over time, it's almost 100% of that last audience has already been on the registry, thanks to me, thanks to the Silver Tour. And we've done that all over the country, and used our materials in Italy, Germany, even Japan, to educate people, not just seniors. I mean, we call it seniors because that's our target demographic.
Right.
But you obviously saw a show and you're not a senior.
No. Well,
so it's not restricted. We get a lot of veterans, and it's been tremendously successful.
Well, Robert, let me ask you this, and I know you hit on a lot of points. So you've been, like you said, you've been traveling all over the country. We talk about Florida, we talk about California. Me and you are both in Florida. But let's talk about when you, with the government, and we see this issue, and then I want to go into your prison time, but since you brought this up, we see the drug companies, the alcohol companies is putting millions of dollars into campaigning against medical marijuana. We have Florida; they're trying to legalize marijuana in general. I don't know if that's coming up in 2020 or the election after that. But you would know better than me.
It should be on the ballot in 2020 for recreational.
Right. But we see all these companies, like I said, alcohol, prescription drugs, they're all putting this big money into marijuana. Do you believe that money in politics is the reason why stuff like marijuana isn't legal? And we see, as you said, all these other drugs, Lunesta, these are stuff that aren't really doing anything for elderly people, young people, whatever it may be, but people are taking all these drugs because they feel like it's going to help them, whereas if they just did something natural, such as marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it, it would help them way more because it's natural than some kind of medicine that's got all kinds of crazy side effects.
Well, until a few years ago, there was no one educating doctors. It was never mentioned in medical school, although up until 1937, it had been the second most prescribed medicine by doctors in America.
Right.
In 1937, it's when we passed the Marijuana Stamp Act. And the purpose of it was to stop the growing of hemp because it threatened the cotton industry, hemp threatened the lumber industry. Hemp has 25,000 uses, and it's a form of marijuana. It's cannabis sativa with less than 3% THC. That's the current definition in most states. The movement was to stop that. It had nothing to do with marijuana. But in order to stop that, they had to badmouth marijuana. And the biggest producer of newsprint and products from pulpwood that could be replaced by hemp was, what's his name, who owned all the newspapers? Hearst. William Randolph Hearst. And he was the big campaigner who made up all these stories about Mexicans are killing each other, and marijuana makes white women run after black men, and makes black men feel they're as good as white men, and all of this bullshit.
Right.
And they had to say and do everything possible to try and bury marijuana in order to stop the growing of hemp. Of course, they're the same plant, or so close. But that's changing. There are medical schools now that are teaching cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. A few years ago, if you looked at a doctor and you said you've got an endocannabinoid system that regulates everything in the body, he'd scratch his head. What the hell's this guy talking about? It's not true anymore. We have made tremendous progress. There's at least a dozen medical schools that have cannabis programs. There are continuing education programs for doctors. Plus, there's money in it. And in Florida alone, we've got over 3,000 doctors on the registry. Most of them, their interest was getting on the registry so that they could sell recommendations.
Right.
Cool. We got to have it. We need them. But there's also a core of doctors here in Florida that actually treat patients with marijuana. They follow up, they do research, they teach other doctors. You got people like Barry Gordon, Dr. Barry Gordon, Dr. Michelle Weiner in your area, Dr. Michael McKenzie, Dr. What's her name? Kelly King. There's probably 15 or 20 at least doctors who are actually treating patients, doing the research that should have been done. I mean, there's 22,000 research reports on the government PubMed website, but people don't go there. They don't look there. Somebody's got to tell them, you want to learn? That's where you go. Right. People don't know. And so they say, well, geez, why didn't I know that? Or why didn't my doctor tell me to treat my cancer? Once asked my my primary, who is now on the registry, but he wasn't back then.
Right.
And I had gone to my dermatologist. I had a bunch of skin cancers, and I had already been taking them off with cannabis. I'd go in and let her find them, and she said, well, I'll set you up for a Mohs procedure. I said, no more Mohs, please. They don't work too good. I'll be back in a month. If you can find the cancer, you can cut it out. And of course they couldn't, because it only takes a week, 10 days to get rid of almost any kind of skin cancer, which is a drop of RSO, cannabis oil, hash oil, Phoenix tears, whatever you want to call it. It's hash oil, highly concentrated.
So let me ask you. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
Go ahead, ask me.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I hear a lot of stuff, and I am for legalization, but I hear a lot of stuff in the news. We see a lot of, the drug cartels, a lot of the people that are pushing, more illegal marijuana. They're growing them on these fields and stuff where there's a lot of toxins, all kinds of stuff that they're laced with, and people don't know that when they buy it. Obviously, they're not buying it legally. But what do you think about that? Do you feel like if we legalize all drugs, it'll hurt the cartels? It will lessen something like that, where there are toxins and pesticides in this marijuana that people are buying illegally?
In order to regulate it, you got to legalize it.
Right.
I mean, that's fairly simple. I know when I go into Trulieve, who sponsors all my Silver Tour shows, when I go into Trulieve and buy flour, it's clean, it's been labbed, there's no sticks, no stones, no seed. And they're real buds. They're not half leaf, half bud, like you sometimes get from your neighborhood grower.
Right.
And you're getting clean product. And although people scream it's too expensive, for a guy who spent 30 years in jail, nothing would be too expensive to do it legally. But the truth is, most of the flour that's sold in the dispensaries, after all the discounts they give out, it comes to $10, $11 a gram. That ain't killer.
Yeah.
But the pot is. I mean, most of their strains are over 20%. And to get a clean gram, and it usually weighs, it comes in eighths, and it usually weighs a little more than an eighth. To get that clean for $10, $11 a gram, to me, that's fabulous. And there are people screaming, they're robbing us, corporate greed, making a fortune. This business is developing like any new business,
Yeah.
especially a new good business. The little guys start it, and the big guys buy them out.
Yeah.
The way it is. That's capitalism. That's how it works. You can't protect the little guy who doesn't really know how to do business when some guy comes over and says, I'll give you $1 million for your license in your store. The little guy, he's not making a profit anyway, but he don't know what the hell he's doing.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 businesses are going to fold within a few years. In the mom and pop marijuana business, they were folding as quick as they were setting up because they couldn't compete with the people who were well financed, had really nice looking dispensaries, and ran them in strict compliance to the law. Whereas mom and pop, they had a hard time doing that. They couldn't afford elaborate security systems. They couldn't get a variety of clean product. They had to depend on whatever anybody brought to their back door.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
Right.
what's happening here is not bad. There are people, I remember in Colorado a few years ago before they passed legalization, the whole town was crying that these mom and pop stores were all over the place. They're opening in every gas station. They look terrible. You know what? All of those places are damn near either got better or folded up within a year.
Yeah.
You have to be a merchant to run a business. And if you're not, you're going to lose your butt. I was raised, my mom had a children's store. My dad had a shoe store. And never hard work. And you have to know what you're doing or you're gone.
You're going to go under.
So I started the Silver Tour. And we got seniors all over the country conscious of cannabis and what it can do. And you know what? They're very accepting. It's so much different now than it was a couple of years ago. When I go into a place like Vizcaya, it's, hey, Bobby, did you bring any samples? It used to be I'd go in there and nobody wants to hear about marijuana. When I started Silver Tour, I couldn't get into a senior community. Vizcaya was one of the first ones. Actually, we started in Reform synagogues because the Reform movement always espoused medical marijuana. They just didn't have anybody who knew how to talk about it.
So let me ask you this. What would you say to people that, you got a lot of these groups of people that are uneducated, they don't know the benefits of marijuana. They come in, Rob, and they talk to you and they say, oh, I'm worried about my kids getting a hold of it, the gateway drug, to heroin. They saw all this nonsense. Now, me and you don't agree that that's true. We know that's just a made-up
Yeah,
hoax.
but that's mostly gone.
You believe
I
that?
think there's one idiot who still talks about it as a gateway drug. But there's been so much research and so much written. The press has been our best help.
Mm-hmm.
The press has written thousands and thousands of positive stories about cannabis. There have been dozens of TV specials about the benefits of cannabis. Probably one of the biggest turnarounds was the first Sanjay Gupta special about Charlotte's Web and the kids. And people began to realize that it's not harmful. And when he came out and said, I have been wrong all these years about marijuana. It's a very valuable medicine. It is not harmful. When he said that, a little light went on across the country and made my job so much easier.
But do you worry about like the right wing religious right? They go out there and they preach this stuff. A lot of Republicans, and maybe you see it more that Republicans are more standing with you. But the Republicans, I know a lot of Republicans. They're religious. All drugs are bad. This and that. That's the people that I'm more so talking about. That they're never going to accept it unless maybe it happens to their family that something like cannabis could help them, and they say, oh no, we're not going to use it, and then the family member dies where they could have been saved.
You can't speak rationally to irrational people.
True.
And when your fundamental beliefs are irrational to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
then that explains why you can't talk to a Trumpster.
True.
Realistically,
No,
especially in the evangelical movement,
yeah.
their beliefs are so steeped in magic that reality doesn't enter the picture. And so no matter what you say, it doesn't penetrate,
Yeah.
because the prime tenet of religions is faith. That means faith means you have to put aside your rational thinking and believe something that is totally irrational.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really a small percentage of the population. They're
Have you
very
ever
vocal.
got to any of those people though, Robert? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I've done shows in churches, synagogues,
Right.
and the Libertarian Party. I've done shows for them, and that's as irrational as you get. I mean, they're good people, but they really think they can live without anything from a government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you look at what business are you in? Well, I have a shoe store. Is it important that you have a street and a sidewalk and a place for people to park? Oh yeah. Well, the taxpayers paid for that. You didn't make that on your own.
That's right.
Public school. You go to a state college. Socialists paid for that.
Yeah.
You didn't get that.
Right.
You didn't make that free yourself. They don't understand. I don't even know why the hell I got off on
No, I mean that's another rant. We got a lot of people.
Terrific people, and they love marijuana, so I love them.
Yeah, we got a lot of people that don't want to pay taxes that don't believe what you said. So
yeah,
but that's another story for another day. But I do want to go back into when the FBI had their eyes on you, and I know you have the book and the movie, and I want to turn to that as the last point of the interview. But before that, I want to talk about being in prison for 30 years, which is for marijuana dealing is insanity, first of all. And I mean, I don't, you can correct me if I'm wrong. That was the longest sentence in U.S. history that you served, correct?
At that time it was, yeah.
Okay.
There's still a few people now. At that time, they could not give you life for marijuana. But I got 64 years, no parole. That might as well be life. I was 35 at the time. Yeah. I maxed it out with good time. However, today, they don't get enough good time to mean anything. They get, I think, 15 days a year or something. I got 15 days a month. So I was able to get out in half the time. I got out in 30 years, but I started with a 64-year sentence. Yeah. Today, there's probably 8 or 10 people still in prison who have life sentences.
Wow.
And unless they're commuted, or the law changes retroactively, which is very rare, they're not going to get out. And it makes no sense. They're serving time for what I served time for.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is disgraceful. But can you talk about being in prison? What did you face in prison? I mean, you're with people that murdered people that have other offenses that were way worse, not even close to what you did, and you're living with these same people. How was it living with those people, and what was the day-to-day stuff?
Scary.
Right.
I started out in the Supermax in Marion.
Wow.
Worst offenders in the whole world, most dangerous people. They sent me there because of all the publicity they pumped out of the case. I mean, it was the DEA and FBI who pumped out the publicity, making me look like they called me a kingpin. I wasn't even a safety pin. But they were the ones who made it look so bad. And then once they rationalized that sentence, they felt they had to send me somewhere tough. So I ended up in the most dangerous prison in America. At that time, it was the only Supermax. And yeah.
How did you get through that, though? You being in Supermax.
Carefully. No, first of all, I had something going for me. And that was with that kind of a sentence and all the publicity that the case had, everybody knew I was stand up.
Yeah.
Did not talk about anybody. That is imperative in staying alive in a place like Marion. I was in the Supermax at Marion. And so I came in with a lot of respect from people. And to add to that, at that time, there weren't many people like me in prison, especially in the Supermax. You know, it used to be they sent you to the country club for a couple of months or a year or two. And all the bank robbers there, most of what was in the feds back in those days, they all wanted to learn pot business. So I got popular.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's better than something else.
People would try to befriend me to try to learn how to do what I did, because there was so much written in publicity and stories in the Times and Newsweek and High Times, all kinds of times.
Right. So can you talk about the last question, and then I want to go into the book and the movie, was when you were over there, and did you know that the FBI was you were on their radar? Did you know that they were trying to screw around with you? I know you talked about the nickname that they gave you, and so, but did you know how close they were, or if they how to get away from them, or give them a bad lead?
The first time somebody gets called to a grand jury is when you find out about it. Because if they're friends, they let you know immediately.
Right.
So as soon as the grand jury investigation started, we knew all about it. We knew who they called, not through any secret process, only because if they'd call my real estate agent or friend or whatever, he'd call me and say, hey, I was called to the grand jury. They want to know about you. Yeah. So Right. And yeah, we knew. We never thought for a minute that it would be a RICO and kingpin charge, because up until then, if you were charged first offense smuggling or distribution, the most you'd get is 5 years, and chances are, back in the parole days, you'd only do like 36 months, 40 months, and that's what we thought we were facing if we ended up arrested. And that's not what we faced. We faced the biggest pot indictment they had ever written.
Was that to make an example out of you guys, or do you feel it was just for the amount?
No, it wasn't for the amount. They had to blow up the amount. It was to make an example. And the reason was, at that time, the FBI was kind of out of business. They were no longer in the witch hunting communist business, which had been their main thrust since World War II. And their stated mission was to stop industrial secrets being stolen. Not too sexy. They wanted to join with the DEA. The DEA, I think it was Carter who threatened to eliminate the DEA at one time. They don't do anything positive for us. In any case, and the DEA needed a partner, because, the DEA has no arrest powers. When they formed the DEA, in order to prevent the kind of corruption there was in the original DEA, which was the BMD and then the BMDD, Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Both those agencies were shut down for corruption. When they chartered the DEA during Nixon to ensure no corruption, they didn't give them arrest powers. But FBI had arrest powers and nobody to arrest. This was the first joint task force, FBI, DEA. So they had to make it a huge show. And it was a show trial.
So with the presidential candidates running right now on both sides, we see, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you know more than me. I look at President Trump, and I don't think he's going to do anything with marijuana legalization.
No, he gave us the hint yesterday. He said, I don't have to honor the laws protecting the states that have legalized.
We've seen guys like Bernie Sanders who have stuck up for legalization, and a few other candidates on the Democratic side said they'll get more lenient, but I think it's more so of Bernie has done the most for pushing legalization. So what do you think about, as far as we said, Trump's not, what about the other Democratic candidates? Do you agree with me that it's pretty much Bernie that would push for legalization, or would be any other candidates that you've heard?
No, they're all going to push for it.
Okay.
The last one to come around was Biden,
Right.
and he totally changed his tune the other day, and said that, you know, I forget who it was who was educating him. Somebody was educating him, but he's coming around, and he's the most old school of all of them.
Yeah.
People like Elizabeth Warren would be terrific. So would most of the other candidates.
Right.
They'd all make good presidents, and they'd all make much better presidents than the one we've got. The one with the biggest balls who'll do the most for this country is obviously Elizabeth Warren, because she's done it before. She's got the choices to do it.
Well, let me ask you this. We have, and this is the last question on marijuana. We have all these guys in prisons. They're still picking up black guys, mostly black people, off the streets for little small amounts of marijuana. They lock them up there, keep them overnight, sentence them to tough sentences still. And you're a person that's been locked up for a while. You know how tough the sentences were back then. And we're still seeing more black men being locked up for marijuana. What is your take on that and the laws as far as locking people up for marijuana now? I know it's changed a little bit since when you were, put in prison, but what do you think is the difference?
It's changed a lot. And what makes the difference is not legalization, it's decriminalization.
Real.
When I got out of prison and I started with the first petition down here, which was Puff'em, became Amendment 2, that became medical once Morgan threw his money in.
Yeah.
But what we were able to accomplish in the early days was to go to all these town meetings and county meetings and ask them to decriminalize. And surprisingly, we succeeded in almost every county in southern Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We decriminalized first parts of Dade Metro in the university area, and then it spread to the whole of Dade County. We did Palm Beach County. Lauderdale was tough. Broward, we did piece by piece, township by township.
Oh, wow.
But where you decriminalize, you don't have those busts for small amounts. And that's important. I mean, the cop will take somebody in, and then they'll refuse to prosecute them, and they got to let them go. So they'll write a ticket instead.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Will we be able to get the legalization, rather, in the state of Florida in 2020? Yes or no?
I think we got about a 60-70% chance. First of all,
yeah,
petition has to make the ballot. there are two viable petitions. Regulate Florida, and I'm a director of Regulate Florida, and have worked very hard. We got, we're sitting at about 100,000 signatures, which got us into the Supreme Court for review, but we already know we don't have the money to get millions. You know, you need 776,000 valid signatures. So you better have 1 million to make up for what gets thrown out. And that takes a couple of $1 million. There's no other way to do it. Cannot be done grassroots. Been tried in other states, never succeeded. And so we have lowered our sights, and we're in Regulate, we're concentrating on working on the legislature to get what we need. But the other petition is the MILF petition. It just so happens the acronym ended up being slightly funny, but it's not a bad petition. There are a lot of people who are going around saying, don't vote for this, it has no home grow, don't vote for this. Well, first of all, only 1.5% of tokers grow. Most people can't grow. They try it, it comes out lousy, and they don't have $2,500 for a half decent closet set up that'll give them, you know, ventilation, circulation pump. Seeds are very expensive. The kind of soil you should use, the lights cost a ton, cost at least $2,000, $2,500 for a decent little inside home grow. So to me, that's, you know, that it doesn't hinge on that, because it only affects a small portion of the population. We need to vote this in, even though it doesn't include home grow. It doesn't eliminate it either. It just doesn't talk about it. We'll get home grow from the courts. The courts have been great here in Florida. They gave us flour when the legislature didn't want us to have it. The courts told the legislature they've got to issue more licenses. They've got to issue minority licenses. Courts have been terrific. So if the other petition passes, we will have rec, and it'll be okay.
The Supreme Court did just change in Florida. I think there's 2 or 3 new justices on that from Ron DeSantis. Are they going to be, the question is, are they favorable to this amendment, and are they going to be favorable to marijuana in general? And that's what I do worry about now. With there's less liberal justices on the court, where now there's 3 from the DeSantis regime.
Florida is a tourist state, and we are losing billions of dollars. Colorado, California, Western states, Massachusetts, which now has legal. Illinois now has recreational. They start day after tomorrow, New Year's Day. This state depends heavily on tourists.
Right.
And it's coming around. You know, when I started the Silver Tour and when I had to raise money, each of those shows cost about $2,000 to put on, minimum, because we give them a free meal and lots of free swag. And we bring in people that we have to pay to talk. So it was tough raising money. And when I went to the big donors, especially to put my show on TV, because I run it like an infomercial, I pay for that time. And they all said to me, Bobby, we think Florida will be the last place on the face of the earth to legalize. So we're going to put our money in Massachusetts, in Arizona, and Colorado, where it's going to do some good. And I had no answer for that, because it's a tough state, but we did it. And we actually have a really good medical program. I don't care what anybody says. Vibrant. It's got all the product except edibles. And we're just waiting for the regulations to be published for edibles. In the meantime, the dispensaries are selling concentrates. Put a little bit in some butter and whip it up and make you some brownies and some cookies and lots of other things.
Right.
So we're in good shape compared to the way we used to be. But I'll tell you what breaks my heart. When I go to less affluent senior communities, and I talk to, say, 200 people,
Yeah.
maybe 15 or 20 will come up and make an appointment and get the card. They can't afford it. And they can't afford the $75 for the state card twice a year and the 200 for their rec.
Right.
I go to places like the Villages. I did a little show there. There were only 150 people. We had almost 100 sign up to get their card.
Wow.
Now that doesn't mean anything to me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's my reward, but I don't get any money from it.
Yeah.
That
No.
goes to the doctor. But when people line up and the doctor's got to come back 2 days in a row just
Yeah.
to make appointments, I know I've been successful. I've done my job. But the contrast between the kind of community I live in where people really can't afford it
Yeah.
and someplace like Kings Point where the doctor had to come back for 3 days
Yeah.
to make appointments. Of course, I had 350 people at that show,
Right.
and they all wanted to sign up. I mean, it was magnificent, and that's how we change things here. Because the
Right.
more, if you talk to 300 people, talking to 3,000. Plus, seniors go out, they talk to the family, they talk to the friends, they
Right.
play a little cards, they sit by the pool, and what do they have to talk about? What could be more exciting than
Yeah.
talking about marijuana?
Yeah.
What's changed? And then they come out of the closet and say, "Oh, I used to grow a little bit when I was in college. And I used to smoke back then, and then I forgot how much enjoyment I got. And hey, you want to come over to my house?" And it's it's made a world of difference. If I
Right.
talk to 100 people, I'm talking to 500 people, and that's what makes the Silver Tour so special. It's a
Right.
show. It's not a seminar or a lecture. Well, you've seen it. We put on a
Yeah.
show, and we hope
Yep.
people hold their interest, hold their attention, and we get our point across.
So, Bobby, last question. They made a movie about this. You got your book. Actually, you got a couple of books. Can you talk first about the books? What made you write the books? And secondly, about the movie.
The movie was made by Tour, the people who
Mhm.
did Cocaine Cowboy. Uh, I love it. It's got a terrible name, Square Grouper. I fought with them over that. I said, you can't do that. Nobody outside of Florida is going to know what the hell a square grouper is, and half the people here aren't going to know.
Yeah.
Okay, they'll find out. Well, in every other country, they changed the name, and then they called it Godfathers of Ganja,
Yeah.
and that was a lot better.
Right.
But I love the movie. It's got 3 stories. The Coptic Christians, which used it for their ceremonies,
Mhm.
Black Tuna Gang, which be me, and Everglades City, where the whole town over on the West Coast was
Right.
running weed in their fishing boats. And it's an enjoyable movie. I like it. But the book I wrote while I was in prison, Black Tuna Diaries,
Mhm.
it's in its 9th printing. It
Wow.
is it is an enjoyable, fun book. It's not depressing. It's not dark. Even the prison stories, which are all true, I picked out the ones that were entertaining. And
Yeah.
plenty of crazy shit happens in prison. And so I was able to write a story about every one of the 7 prisons I was in. Uh, some of them are scary, but they're not
Yeah.
depressing. People don't want to read dark things. There's
Right.
smuggling stories, stories of my years in Europe when I started the biggest chain of schools, my years on the boardwalk as a pitchman. Uh, this book's done very well. The other one is a very serious fact book that was bomb, an utter bomb.
Oh, jeez.
Uh, it's got years of research in it. It's got the best pieces ever written about why it's illegal and who's collecting the money and how
Yeah.
much the sheriffs are spending millions of dollars to keep it illegal because they make their money from the sheriff's jail. That's the easiest bust they have. They get paid uh, for the number of arrests they make. So this one kind of slow. But yeah,
Right.
the other book everybody loves. It got great reviews. It's a fun read, and they're all available on our website,
Right.
silvertour.org. Org, not com, org.
All right. So we
And
can
you go
get
to the
that on.
storefront and you buy one, and I get all the money, and I'll sign
Right.
it and send it out to you.
So can you just spell
You
out the
can get it on
website?
Amazon, but then I don't get as much.
Right. Yeah. Can you spell out the website, Bobby, one more time for the viewers?
The Silver Tour.
Silvertour.org. Got it.
Yeah, the silvertour.org, as in organization. Organized crime. That's me, organized crime. You know, I put up those billboards everywhere that said, I'm a patient, not a criminal, and a picture of a guy in a wheelchair. In my case, especially back then, I was a criminal, not a patient.
Right.
But it worked.
But yeah, hey, Bobby, I appreciate the time. And second of all, thanks for what you're doing on this issue, because we didn't really talk about it, but I mean, we did a little bit, but all the stuff that marijuana can do. I know you talked about the skin cancer and stuff, and I saw that firsthand, and I don't think he'll mind me talking about him, but Steve West, the guy that organized that Vizcaya, when you went over there and put that event on there, he was showing me that he had the skin cells, and he put the marijuana on there, the cannabis rather, and it took the cancer right out. So he was showing me exactly what you were saying. So I mean, that's stuff that people, if they didn't go to your Silver Tour, or if they don't have a friend like I said that told me stuff like that, they're not going to know, and they're not going to know the great medical effects and the relaxation effects in general of what this can do, for our health. And it's a plant. It's not pills. It's not going to have all these crazy side effects. Now they run the commercials. I don't know if you saw any. Driving with high, it's like driving drunk and all this BS. So it's just insane.
But we've reached so many people, and
Yeah.
most of them do exactly what Steve did with you. They
Yeah.
tell other people, they say, look, it worked. I
Yeah.
did a 20-minute documentary on a guy with brain cancer
Mhm.
and how it was gone in 6-7 weeks with cannabis oil. And they had him in hospice and gave him like maybe a week left.
Incredible.
And then he went around with me and did shows with me for 3 years. And WHDT here in Florida ran that. It was a 20-minute documentary. They ran it a couple hundred times. We've reached a lot of people. And then those people go out and they reach other people. Because when you cure something or get rid of your pain or am able to sleep or have been able to stave off dementia,
Mhm.
you tell people.
Big things. Yeah.
And they do that. And that's why we've really made so much progress so quick. Most people who don't know what it was like before have no idea how we got to where we are.
Now, people can request you if they want you to speak in their town, city, or organization online, and for that. And will you also be talking for this amendment now on the all around the state of Florida to get this passed in 2020?
Once the amendment passes the Supreme Court
Mm-hmm.
and qualifies for the ballot, and I think only one of them will, the MILF petition.
Right.
A lot of people are against it because it was sponsored by two big dispensaries. But
Yeah.
are the right people to sponsor it?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, they put
Yeah.
up, 5 million for a license, another 5-10 million to put together a grow and dispensaries. They got a horse in this race, and
Mhm.
they said, profits, greedy. Well, damn, they're entitled to make them.
Right. Yeah.
Uh, I'm the only guy not making a profit because Silver Tour is a nonprofit, and I've yet to take a salary. But I'm so happy with what's going on, and so pleased with the progress we've made. That once that other petition gets on the ballot, if it gets on the ballot, My whole team from Normal is going to get behind it. My team from Regulate Florida is getting behind it, because this is our last chance to pass REC as an amendment where we have control. There will not be another chance to do an amendment. This legislature hates that. They've raised the bar twice for a number of petitions, and they said you couldn't keep the petitions live for 4 years. Now what they're going to do is, and another state has done the same thing, to eliminate the public being able to pass their own laws, they will say that you need to pass it twice. Now, if it costs $3 to $5 million to pass it the first time, and then you wait 2 years, which is the next election, to pass it again, and you need another $3 to $5 million, it's not going to happen. There's never going to be another amendment after 2020. It's going to get on the ballot. Let's pass this. And then what we need to fix, the courts have been great. The courts have given us almost everything we wanted. And that's the way to go. And
Well,
that's
Bobby,
what regulators want to do.
Well, we do need to pass this. And again, thanks for all the work you do, and you will be doing, traveling all around the state and all around the country doing these talks, because we need more people, as you are doing, to speak up and, stand out. Because if we don't get this passed, then, there's more people going to prison. There's more people not getting those medical benefits that are needed. So I appreciate the time you spent, and everybody definitely go and follow them at the silvertour.org, O-R-G, and also look for that book. If you could just hold it up one more time before we end.
Let me get the good one.
So Black Tuna Diaries.
Yeah, anybody wants to book a show, it doesn't cost you anything. Just invite us to your senior community. Find us a nice big room that'll hold a couple hundred people, and we'll come there and give you a great show. We'll advertise the show for you, and we'll give them all a free meal. So contact us through the website or contact me with a message through Facebook, and I'll have my booker, Billy, get in touch with you. Let's set up a show for your community.
All right, Bobby, thanks so much for the time. The silvertour.org. Definitely check it out, and also look for that amendment. Make sure you sign the petition, get that out. I know I just got one in the mail, so
that's the one. That's the MILF